Hi, welcome to Listen2Riches. Today, I'd like to share a summary of the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This book was written by Charles Duhigg, a reporter for the New York Times, and it was published in February 2012 by Random House. In this book, Duhigg delves into the science of how habits are formed and how they can be changed. The Power of Habit achieved great success, making it to the bestseller lists of the New York Times, Amazon.com, and USA Today. It was also longlisted for the Financial Times and McKinsey Business Book of the Year award in 2012. The central theme of this book is understanding how our brains influence the decisions we make in our daily lives and how we can use this knowledge to make positive changes. Charles Duhigg, a highly accomplished individual with degrees from both Yale and Harvard and a Pulitzer Prize winner, offers valuable insights into how we can take control of our habits. Did you know that 40% of our daily actions are driven by habits? These habits are often unconscious, but imagine the potential if we could take charge of that 40%. Duhigg believes that by changing just one small habit, we can set off a chain reaction of positive improvements in our lives. With determination and belief in ourselves, we can take the necessary steps to adapt our habits and move toward a more positive and fulfilling life. How often do you make the decision to start exercising more, eat healthier, or finally quit smoking? You may succeed for a little while, days, weeks, or even months, but then the strong urge to return to your old habits takes over, and you find yourself back where you started. Sound familiar? Many of us want to make positive changes in our lives, but sticking with them over the long term can be incredibly challenging. If you can relate to this, then you're already aware of the significant influence that habits have on your life. In The Power of Habit, you will discover effective strategies for breaking those undesirable habits and establishing new, beneficial ones. By gaining insight into how the human brain shapes our daily choices, you'll understand the extent to which our habits guide our behavior and impact our society. Fortunately, armed with this knowledge, you'll be well prepared to conquer the force of habit and embrace new ones that can pave the way to a positive and life-altering transformation. Today I will share 6 key points in the book, starting with 1. The habit loop. 1. The golden rule of habit change. 2. Adopting keystone habits. 3. The significance of willpower. 4. The significance of belief. 5. Habits become your responsibility. Without further delay, let us delve into the first key point, the habit loop. Consider your morning routine. How do you kickstart your day? Maybe you reluctantly roll out of bed at an early hour, shuffle to the kitchen, grab the coffee pot, and begin the ritual of brewing your morning coffee. Have you ever paused to ponder, what do I do next? Probably not. Your brain has crafted a routine that allows you to carry out these actions almost automatically, as if you were a well-programmed robot. So, without much thought, you pour water into the coffee maker, place the pot in position, add coffee grounds to the filter, and press the on button. Nowadays, some fancy coffee makers even run on timers, but regardless of your specific routine, whether it involves blending a morning smoothie or grabbing a protein shake for the gym, you don't need to halt and contemplate your next move. Now, let's delve into the intriguing question of how our brains enable us to perform these morning tasks almost instinctively, even when we might still be half asleep. The answer lies in the deep recesses of our brains, within a primitive region near the spinal cord called the basal ganglia. To comprehend how this area contributes to our habits, let's examine a study conducted by a group of researchers at MIT, which involved observing the behavior of mice. In this study, mice were placed in a T-shaped maze, where they had to navigate their way to a tempting piece of chocolate awaiting them at the end of the maze. Simultaneously, the researchers closely monitored the brain activity of these mice as they embarked on their chocolate-seeking journey. Over time, the mice learned to memorize the route to the chocolate by consistently making a left turn in the maze. As they became adept at this, their brain activity decreased. This process, where a series of actions becomes almost automatic, is known as chunking. It serves an evolutionary purpose by conserving energy in our brains and making our daily tasks more efficient. Now, let's break down the anatomy of every habit, which can be divided into 3 key components known as the habit loop. First, there's the cue or trigger, which sets the habit into motion. For example, the ringing of your alarm clock signals to your brain that it's time to execute your morning routine. Next comes the routine itself, the set of actions you perform habitually. This is where your autopilot coffee-making skills come into play. Your routine involves getting out of bed and heading to the kitchen to prepare your coffee. Finally, the reward, that satisfying sip of hot, flavorful coffee, marks the culmination of your routine. It's at this point that your brain activity increases, reinforcing the connection between the cue and the routine. As Duhigg aptly puts it, habits are the choices that all of us deliberately make at some point, and then stop thinking about but continue doing, often every day. So, when you reflect on your daily choices, consider how many of them are driven by habit. Remember, habits are automatic, so perhaps a more intriguing question is, how many decisions do you make without even consciously contemplating them? You'll soon discover that a substantial portion, no less than 40%, of your decisions are, in fact, shaped by habits. Now, it's time to unravel the profound influence of habit and learn how to harness its power for your benefit. If you want to change your habit, there will be rules, and here comes the second key point of this book, the golden rule of habit change. As you navigate your daily grind, your morning and afternoon routines often become indispensable. For example, you might have a favorite coffee shop that you faithfully visit each morning to satisfy your caffeine cravings. Or perhaps you've established the routine of hitting the gym right after work. These routines eventually evolve into habits, and while many of these habits are harmless and even beneficial, they underscore how easily we can adopt unhealthy ones too. Instead of making that morning coffee stop, you might find yourself at a fast food joint, ordering a sugary sweet tea and a sausage and egg biscuit instead of your usual brew. Once you become aware that your morning McDonald's fix might be contributing to unwanted weight gain, you'll notice how difficult it is to pass by your usual haunt without stopping. You may catch yourself thinking, just this one last time. Or you might drive past with a lingering sense of irritability that lingers throughout the day. Breaking a bad habit is no easy task because of the powerful craving for the reward that awaits at the end of the habit loop. Each morning you yearn for that surge of sugar from the sweet tea and the satisfying savory taste of the sausage biscuit. To conquer these detrimental habits, you must consider adapting the habit loop. Charles Duhigg delves into the story of Ray, the proprietor of Sea on the Range, a surf and turf restaurant. What was once a thriving business has now dwindled due to the habits of Ray and his staff. With an exhausting workload of nearly 80 hours per week, Ray has developed a drinking habit to take the edge off after long days. While not classified as an alcoholic, he increasingly craves alcohol earlier in the day, sometimes indulging in a cold beer before day's end. This habit has negatively impacted his patients and consequently his profits. Ray's impatience with employees, who often neglect customers seeking drink refills, has resulted in heated outbursts in front of customers and difficulties retaining good workers. It's evident that Ray must alter his habits to reverse his business's decline. A crucial aspect of changing a habit involves identifying each component of the habit loop. For instance, Ray identified his cue as the end of a stressful day, his craving as the burn of whiskey, his routine as sipping double whiskey, and his reward as the relaxation he felt after indulging. This leads to what Duhigg calls the golden rule of habit change. Do not change the cue or reward, change the routine, which will subsequently alter the craving. Even a minor adjustment in the habit loop can have a profound impact on one's life. So, how can Ray transform his routine to break his drinking habit? Fortunately, Ray is among the fortunate ones who own a $25,000 pool in his backyard. Instead of yearning for the burn of whiskey, Ray can shift his focus to the scent of chlorine and the sensation of water washing away the fatigue of a long workday. By replacing sips of whiskey with laps in the pool, Ray can replace his drinking habit with a refreshing swim after work. This is precisely why programs like Alcoholics Anonymous are so effective. Instead of seeking solace at a bar, participants find stress relief by attending meetings and sharing their experiences with fellow program members. However, merely substituting a routine may not be sufficient. Duhigg advises individuals like Ray to nurture their new cravings. By dwelling on the cravings that drive our routines, we can make it easier to maintain our habits. In Key Point 3, Adopting Keystone Habits, the author states that change can be intimidating, especially for those who are most resistant to it. If you've ever worked in a large company, you're likely familiar with the trepidation that can accompany the implementation of new policies and shifts in the company's direction. This is a feeling that Paul O'Neill knew well when he assumed leadership of Alcoa in 1987, an aluminum company that had seen better days. Imagine the reactions when O'Neill announced that he would prioritize workplace safety over profit and revenue. Many were skeptical and questioned his decision. One investor even hastily contacted a client, describing O'Neill as a crazy hippie, taking charge and potentially dooming the company. Stakeholders and shareholders were far from supportive of his approach. However, O'Neill understood the significance of changing the company's habits, and he was determined to do just that. He recognized that not all habits are created equal, a concept Charles Duhigg refers to as keystone habits. Keystone habits suggest that we don't need to change everything all at once. Instead, we can focus on one or two key priorities that lead to success. These priorities serve as small wins that, once achieved, spill over into other areas, creating more small wins. Concentrating on just one or two keystone habits can set in motion a chain reaction of positive change within an organization. O'Neill chose to emphasize worker safety, prompting managers and employees to consider ways to make the manufacturing process safer and improve communication regarding safety suggestions. The result was a more productive and profitable organization. By encouraging employees to concentrate on one keystone habit, O'Neill understood how disrupting habits in one area could catalyze positive change throughout the entire company. So, how did O'Neill's changes impact the company? Would we be discussing it if they had not been successful? Absolutely not. Despite initial doubts, O'Neill's approach turned out to be a tremendous success. By the time he retired in 2000, Alcoa's annual net income had increased fivefold since his tenure began. However, the concept of changing keystone habits is not limited to large corporations. Individuals can adopt it too. Take Michael Phelps, the Olympic gold medalist swimmer, for instance. He embraced visualization and calming techniques as his keystone habits, believing that his ability to visualize success and maintain composure under pressure set him apart from the competition. Moreover, research suggests that when attempting to lose weight and adopt healthier habits, developing keystone habits can be pivotal. Focusing on just one habit, like keeping a food journal, can serve as a small win that triggers a cascade of other small wins, ultimately leading to significant positive lifestyle changes. Next, let us move on to Key Point 4, the significance of willpower. Replacing bad habits with good ones may sound like a straightforward concept. Swap that whiskey for a swim, trade the cigarette for a piece of gum, or switch the weekend TV binge for an outdoor hike. It all appears easy on the surface. But if you've ever tried to quit smoking or shed some extra pounds, you're well aware of how challenging it can be to embrace these new habits. This difficulty arises because our willpower plays a pivotal role in cultivating essential habits. According to Duhigg, there's no keystone habit more crucial than willpower. In the 1960s, Stanford conducted a famous study involving a group of 4-year-olds. Each child was brought into a room, one by one, where a tempting marshmallow sat on a table, an irresistible treat for many youngsters. The researchers presented the children with a choice: They could either eat the marshmallow immediately or wait a few minutes and receive 2 marshmallows. After issuing the challenge, the researcher exited the room for a quarter hour. Surprisingly, only about 30% of the children managed to resist the allure of the delicious marshmallow. The most remarkable aspect of this study emerged years later when researchers tracked down the now adult participants. They found that those who had exhibited willpower by waiting the full 15 minutes had excelled academically, were generally more popular, and were less prone to developing harmful habits like drug addiction. Subsequent studies yielded similar results. For instance, an investigation of 8th graders in 2005 revealed that those with high levels of willpower achieved better grades and were more likely to gain admission to prestigious schools. However, willpower isn't an innate trait, it's an acquired skill. With time and practice, we can train and fortify our willpower. Researchers from Case Western Reserve University conducted a study in which some participants were asked to refrain from eating a cookie, while others were not. Interestingly, those who resisted the temptation subsequently struggled to concentrate on completing a puzzle, suggesting that their willpower had been depleted. Yet, as with any skill, practice yields improvement, and willpower can be strengthened over time. Consider the example of Starbucks, a major company that recognized the importance of willpower in customer service. Many of their employees demonstrated the willpower to maintain a pleasant demeanor and be courteous to customers. However, when faced with stressful situations, such as irate customers, their reserves of willpower were quickly depleted, leading to difficulty in maintaining their composure. After conducting research, Starbucks executives devised a helpful strategy known as the latte method. This method outlines a series of steps for employees to follow when confronted with a stressful situation. Listen to the customer, acknowledge the complaint, take action, thank the customer, and explain why the situation occurred. By practicing this method, Starbucks baristas became better equipped to handle stressful situations while preserving their willpower and composure. The latte method can also be applied to daily life, albeit with some modifications. It can serve as a guide for developing your own approach to handling challenging situations. For instance, Duhigg discusses the case of hip replacement patients who needed to perform painful exercises as part of their recovery process. Those who took the time to jot down plans for overcoming these obstacles were significantly more successful in navigating the challenges they faced. While they didn't precisely use the latte method, they effectively formulated a plan and mentally prepared themselves to confront painful scenarios. In Key Point 5, we talk about the significance of belief. Why does forming new habits often feel like an uphill battle when you go it alone? For instance, dragging yourself to the gym after a long day at work might seem like an insurmountable task solo, but it suddenly becomes more manageable when you have a gym buddy to accompany you. If you've ever worked in an environment where new policies were introduced, you've likely noticed that these policies are easier to implement when everyone is on the same page. However, when there's opposition or someone resisting the change, adopting a new habit can become considerably more challenging. This is where Duhigg introduces another critical element in the formation of new habits: belief. We previously discussed Alcoholics Anonymous in an earlier chapter, and while replacing the habit of frequenting bars with group meetings proved successful for many, some needed more than just a habit substitution to achieve significant change. Alcoholics Anonymous incorporates the concept of belief in a higher power to help participants have faith in something greater than themselves, something rooting for their success. Belief is not only crucial but also amplified in a group setting, which Duhigg identifies as one of the primary reasons for participants' success. You see, people tend to believe more strongly when they're part of a group. Let's journey back to 1955 when Rosa Parks ignited the civil rights movement by refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. Surprisingly, Rosa Parks wasn't the first person to take this stand. So why did her actions spark such outrage and lead to a year-long boycott? One of the key reasons was Rosa Parks' extensive social connections within her community. She was well known, actively involved as the secretary of the local NAACP chapter, engaged in youth activities at a neighborhood Lutheran church, and even found time to assist local girls with their beautiful debutante gowns. She was so active in her community that her husband remarked she attended potluck dinners more often than eating at home. But how does this relate to the concept of belief? When Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat that day, her strong social ties had a ripple effect, influencing people through peer pressure. Believing in a cause is essential, but it's equally critical to have people actively supporting that cause. As her network of friends and acquaintances joined in, opting out became increasingly difficult. However, when participation began to wane over time, the final piece of the puzzle was set in motion. Martin Luther King Jr. advocated for nonviolent protests and urged participants to forgive their oppressors. This call to action led to the formation of new habits, with people organizing church meetings and peaceful protests. Most importantly, a group of individuals believed that change was possible. Willpower alone isn't enough to initiate change. Believing that change can happen is equally vital. In the final key point, we talk about habits become your responsibility. Once we acknowledge the necessity of altering our habits, it becomes our responsibility to take the essential steps to do so. To illustrate this point, Duhigg presents two cases where individuals face legal repercussions due to their habit-driven actions. The first case involves Brian Thomas, who, in 2008, tragically strangled his wife to death during what scientists term sleep terrors. Overwhelmed by grief and remorse upon realizing his actions, Thomas promptly reported himself to the police, awaiting his trial. During the trial, researchers presented evidence indicating that individuals experiencing sleep terrors may unconsciously act on their impulses. However, during a sleep terror episode, all cognitive brain functions shut down, leaving only the primitive neurological regions active. In Thomas's case, he believed he was defending his wife against a perceived threat, responding to an automatic impulse triggered by the belief that a burglar was attacking her. In other words, Thomas's actions were driven by a habitual response. The second case introduced by Duhigg involves Angie Bachman, who faced a lawsuit from the casino company, Harrah's, demanding $500,000 for unpaid gambling debts. Bachman had already lost her house and $1 million inheritance due to her gambling addiction. Despite her well-known gambling problem and prior bankruptcy declaration, Harrah's continued to send her tempting offers for free casino trips, which Bachman found irresistible. These complimentary hotel stays exacerbated her gambling addiction, as they triggered feelings of pleasure, and she argued in court that she was merely acting upon a habit. So, how did these two trials conclude? Brian Thomas was acquitted of his charges, with many people, including the judge, expressing sympathy for his tragic situation. However, Angie Bachman lost her case and faced widespread public criticism. Both individuals argued that their habits influenced their actions, so why did one result in a not guilty verdict while the other did not? In simple terms, Angie Bachman recognized her harmful habit and possessed the free will to change her behavior. She could have opted out of Harrah's program, sending enticing offers, taking the necessary steps to avoid temptation. Brian Thomas, on the other hand, had no control over his actions, as they occurred during sleep and were the result of a heartbreaking accident. Ultimately, the power to change our habits lies within ourselves. Here are all the 6 key points concluded from the book. Let us recap again all the 6 key points. 1. The habit loop. 2. The golden rule of habit change. 3. Adopting keystone habits. 4. The significance of willpower. 5. The significance of belief. 6. Habits become your responsibility. In conclusion, throughout our lives, we naturally adopt various habits, some beneficial, and others not so much. These routines gradually become ingrained in our behavior, following a simple 3-step pattern: cue, routine, reward. Over time, the allure of the reward can make breaking a bad habit seem increasingly challenging. However, the key to reshaping your habits lies in altering your routine while preserving the same cue and reward. Undoubtedly, this process isn't a walk in the park, which is why developing keystone habits becomes pivotal for achieving success. Keystone habits, such as willpower, can be honed like a skill. By consistently resisting the urge to engage in your undesirable habits, you gradually bolster your willpower. As your willpower strengthens, you become more adept at embracing habits that contribute to a positive and successful lifestyle. Thank you for joining me for this review and summary of the book. If you want to listen to more audiobooks, please do not forget to click on like and subscribe to my channel. And if you have other books you'd like to talk about, feel free to tell me in the comments below. See you in my next audiobook.